What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I'm coming at you guys today with another retro deck profile. And this is probably one of the most modern retro decks that I could possibly do off the top of my head. And this is Sky Striker, ladies and gentlemen. We are playing with the Sky Strikers. So, Sky Striker is a deck that definitely has been in the eyes of many of Yu-Gi-Oh players since their introduction in 2018 through the deck building set Dark Sabers. This has been one of, if not one of the most beloved / hated decks from modern Yu-Gi-Oh, because the thing about the Sky Striker Aces is they're very, very unique in what they do. They are an archetype that consists of 1 to 2 currently extra deck main deck monsters, where they have an extra deck full of support cards, and then they have I'm not kidding you, a fuck ton of spells that all revolve around having no monsters in your main monster zone to activate them. Then, if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, they gain additional effects. And for a good portion of a couple of years, the Sky Striker Aces survived because of not only the fact that, well, people waifu'd Ray. Sorry, you can't do that. She's, like, underage extremely. And 2 was because she has such an amazing story behind her, and a lot of people loved it, to the point where Konami even decided to make a manga series about Ray. And about every card in this, every person, every interaction, every event now is at the point where they've become their own cards. So, yeah, and we're going to get a lot of them in the summer with the next Battle of Legends pack. So, yeah, stay tuned for that, because there's so many of them. I think I've already had a video talking about them, so check that out on my channel. But we're here today for the retro deck profile that is the Sky Strikers. And this did take a minute for me to figure out which version I wanted to build, because when Sky Striker Aces came out, this was about 2018. This was summer of 2018 for the TCG. So this was spring for 2018 for the OCG. And it did take me a while to get these cards, because I think I got all of my Sky Striker cards in 2019 before the ban list really killed Sky Striker. Oh boy, I remember that. So yeah, this variation is probably going to be the 2018 version of it. If not, maybe early 2019. I want to say 2019 version of Sky Striker. Just because that's probably the most fluctuate I can say it is. And there's a lot of stuff in this, and there's a lot of variations. So before the comment section wants to chew me out, just know that, yes, I know there are variations of Sky Striker from those time periods that can easily be played. I'm just using the version that I played, or would have played if I had started Striker earlier, or had Striker in that time frame. Alright, so with that said, let's go ahead and go through this. So starting off with the monsters, we have, of course, 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Ray. Then we have 3 copies of Valor and 3 copies of Ash Blossom Joyous Spring. So that is it for the monsters. No, I'm not joking. That is it for the monsters, because we have a ton of spell cards to go through. So, starting off with the Sky Striker spells. 3 copies of Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, 3 copies of Sky Striker Widow Anchor, 2 copies of Area 0, 2 copies of Multi-Roll, 1 Jamming Wave, 1 Afterburner, 1 Hercules Base, 1 Eagle Booster, 1 Hornet Drone, and 1 Shark Cannon. That is it for all of the spells for the Sky Striker cards. I'm not even joking. That is literally all of them that I'm using in this variation. And that took up majority of the spells. Then we're going to go to the rest of the spells, because that's right. We're going to go to the rest of the spell cards, where we have 3 copies of Foolish Burial of Goods, 2 copies of Call by the Grave, 1 copy of Metal Foes Fusion, 1 Terraforming, hold on, this is a lie, 1 Terraforming, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Raigeki. That is it for all of the spells. And then moving on into the trap cards, I have triple copies of Infinity Impermeance, and then triple copies of There Can Only Be One. So that is it for the traps. And then going into the extra deck, I have triple copies of Striker Ace Kagari, 3 copies of Striker Ace Shizuku, and 3 copies of Striker Ace Hayate. Then moving from the 3 of them, I have 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Celine, the Queen of Master Magicians, 1 copy of Pathologic Bomber Dragon, and 1 copy of Barrel Load Savage Dragon. And that is it for all of the monsters in the extra deck. So that's a total of 15 cards in the extra, with a total of 40 cards in the main. Yeah, that is a lot. That is because there is so little in terms of monster, but there is so many in terms of spells. The traps are there to just fill in for floodgates and stuff. And the extra deck is just basically things Ray can go into while also taking advantage of link climbing. And I believe this is probably one of the strongest non-Cyverse decks that Konami put that much effort into to try to utilize being link monsters. There are a couple others that I don't, I'm not going to really exclude, but yeah, this is definitely one of those decks that Konami said we need something to boost up the new mechanic. They had Pendulum with Pepe and stuff. They had Exceed Climb with a lot of stuff they did with Utopia and them. I want to say, well, it's like, I don't really, because I never just can say there was one variant deck that did Exceeds well. Because Exceeds, there were so many different ones that did Exceeds well. Synchro was all over the place. You had Blackwing, you had Plant, you had Infernity, you had I said Blackwing. What was that other archetype? You had the Synchron stuff. You had oh god, there's just so many. And just one off the top of my head. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot for Exceeds. Because I forgot about Dino Rabbit. I forgot about Insector. Because they did it. Mermail. Yeah, the list for that goes on and on. Because there's so many different variations of decks that take advantage of Exceed summons and Synchro summons and stuff. And Synchros itself was just going through like the plethora of things that you can easily take advantage of when it came to Synchro. As far as fusion and stuff go, those were just most of them did become archetype things. There were generic fusion monsters, but most of them just ended up becoming fodder for just things that came out later on. So let's go into this deck. So I'm running the triple copies of Ray. Ray is basically going to be one of the only monsters on the field floating around the board. Because basically she is the only main deck striker till Rose. Now with Ray's effect, she can send herself to the graveyard to then start to summon a Striker Ace monster from the extra deck to the field. And if a Striker Ace extra deck monster leaves the field, she can be such a summon from the graveyard. And both effects are once per turn each. So you have a lot of versatility with Ray. Ray ultimately is just one of the most notoried warrior monsters to have so much playability. And I want to say, there's a list of those. So, yeah. And this is just crazy though, because the whole deck itself is built around making sure that she is protected, her extra deck monsters are protected, and every spell utilized in this deck works around making sure you can get to her as soon as possible, and then support everything that she needs without having any monsters in the main monster zone. That is literally one of the biggest clauses to it. So, we move on from Ray, and your hand traps of choice can be any variation that you want, but for me, I chose to rock out the Effect Veilers and the Ash Blossoms. Veiler stopping monster effects that are on the field, and then Ash Blossom Joyous Springs to help with, of course, sending cards from the deck to the grave, just summoning cards from the deck, and then adding cards from your deck to your hand. Which, technically, most decks even nowadays still do that. So you really do have to pick when you're going to Ash Blossom. But because of how a lot of other cards work and can help out, you can easily use those. You can, put in cards like DD Crow. You can put in Ghost Ogre Winter Cherries if you want to just max out particular cards from particular extra decks to stop them. You can play around with, what was it? The Ghost Mourner and Winter Chill, Ghost Bell in the Haunted Mansion, Nibiru, and all types of things. And if you're playing the OCG, you have access to Max C. So, yeah, you can definitely take advantage of that, too. So, there's a lot of things you can easily do with the hand trap selection. But these are just the two that I picked. You can easily play a lot more as well. And Strikers have definitely shown you can play a lot of things. You can even play, the Kaiju monsters and take advantage of them. So, yeah. That is it for the monsters. Now we move on into the plethora of spell cards that the Sky Strikers have. For draw power and search, engage, a must-have at 3 at that period of time. You had control with Widow Anchor, being able to negate your opponent's monster effects, but also with 3 or more spells in the graveyard, you were able to steal those monsters away. Oh, I also want to include the fact that with Engage, you had 3 or more spells in the grave, you were able to not only search, but then draw a card off of it, which made it so powerful that the ban list had to hit that as soon as they could. Well, that in Widow Anchor, in Hornet Drone, in Multi-Roll were the 4 spells that were hit effectively by the TCG and OCG Forbidden Limited list. For all the obvious reasons of, wow, these cards are really, really that good. Then we have the field spell Area 0. You can send a card from your side of the field to the grave to excavate top 3 cards to your deck to add a Sky Striker spell card among those to your hand, and then the rest go back to the deck and shuffle, but the card that you selected on the field gets sent to the grave. This is what you combo with Ray, because you could then activate Ray's effect to send her to the grave, get a monster from the extra deck to the field, and then the Area 0 misses the card that it would destroy, which would have been Ray, but you still get the card that you excavated if you did hit a Sky Striker spell. And because, well, as you can see, there's tons of them, you're not going to miss out for any of the Sky Striker cards, whether it's another copy of Ray or you get another set of monsters. Then we have Multi-Roll, which was able to send a card from your field to the grave to protect to make sure that all your spell cards for the rest of the turn were unaffected by your opponent's card effects and cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. Uninterrupted by your opponent's card effects and cannot be affected by your opponent's card effects, even if this card left the field. Then at the end of the turn, for every spell that was played, you're able to set Sky Striker spells from your graveyard to the field, but they are banished when they leave the field. The only mechanic in the game that I would honestly have to say, we didn't get anything to very much utilize sending the spells back into the graveyard after they've been used through Multi-Roll. We have a lot of monsters that have the ability to return those cards back to the hand, but not to send them back into the grave. And then stuff like Kagari could utilize them. I have to say, though, they could have at least made an extra deck monster that took advantage of it on a hard once return effect, but then again, that kind of just leaves in some more problems with Sky Striker. For monster removal, we had Afterburner with the additional effect to remove spell cards. We had Jamming Wave that removed spell cards, and then had additional effect to remove monsters. We had the Hercules base, which allowed you to swing twice at your opponent, but you could not attack them directly, which did cause a lot of good combo plays with stalling out your opponent's monsters that would swing directly, unless they pop the card. And then you were able to send, if the card was popped, you were able to shuffle back 3 Sky Striker cards from your graveyard, except for itself, and then be able to benefit from that. Oh, and the other additional effect was that every monster you destroy by battle, you get to draw a card. So that's not too bad there. Ego Booster to protect your monster from being unaffected by your opponent's card effects. But also, if you had 3 or more spells, it gave it battle immunity. Shark Cannon was your DD Crow, and if you had 3 or more spells, you can take the monster that you're banishing. Hornet Drone, for how chaotic it is, and this was one of the first other spells to be hit. This created a token. If you had 3 or more spells in your graveyard, the token had 1500 attack and defense. This basically was just token spam. You could easily just play a whole bunch of these, get a whole bunch of tokens. Hold on, I gotta scoot this over. Get a whole bunch of tokens, and then just link climb through the Sky Strikers. And because of how resolving effects and stuff work in the game, you're able to resolve these and then pop out the monsters later on. So, yeah. This is the large amount of things, and I'm sure most people are saying, you don't run 3 Multi-Roll, you don't run 3 Area 0. Not in this build. In other builds I did, just not in this one. Alright. Now, moving on from there, we can now go ahead and talk about all of the additional spell cards in the deck that gave this deck even more fuel. And those were basically all the cards that were just either free floating or just those one-offs that you take advantage of. You can also include stuff like Twist Twister, MSTs, and stuff like that too for back row hate. So, Foolish Burial of Goods to send a spell card to the graveyard. One of your main targets was the Metal Foes Fusion because its ability was to send itself from the graveyard back into the deck, shuffle, and then gave you additional draw power. So, the more times you use the Foolish Burial of Goods, you at least had 3 in the grave, and the Metal Foes Fusion was always something you can come back to. Another thing with Metal Foes Fusion was that you can set it and then send it to the graveyard for effects of multi-roll and use it for Area 0, which definitely helped out. Call by the Grave was to counteract hand traps. Terraforming was to search for Area 0. Reinforcement of the Army was to search for Ray. And Raigeki was there to be Raigeki. The only card I couldn't fit in was Upstart Goblin, but you can play Upstart Goblin just for that additional draw power in a freebie of another spell. So, yeah. Alright, that is it for all of the spell cards. And then going into the trap cards, we have Infinity Impermeance. Now, this expensive ass trap variant of Valor definitely is worth its price tag. You can target one monster on your opponent's side of the field, and their monster's effect is negated to the end of the turn. Then every card that was in the same column as this card upon the resolution cannot activate its effect. So, yeah, this is a definitely good thing. Oh, and also, you had no cards you controlled. You can play this from your hand. So, this is a good thing to counteract your opponent if you didn't have Valor on your hand during the first turn. And if you had a couple of these, yeah, you definitely spam this as much as you can to help deal with your opponent's monster effects. Luckily, this is not a once per turn thing. So, yeah, that was a definite yes too. And then the infamous, there can only be one. This was Skytracker's way of dealing with single type decks in the game. So a lot of those mono type decks definitely do this. I don't know if Striker ever cited in cards like Goes in Match or at least Rivalry, but I think because of how they worked in their extra deck, this was definitely the one thing that they spammed. You can spam in Solemn Judgment, Solemn Warnings, and stuff like that too if you wanted to just, be very hate everything. If you can. It's your choice. No shame in that. So, alright, that is it for the main deck, and now let's get on into the extra. So, this is where Ray tags herself out in terms to get the extra deck monsters to the field. So, first off is Kagari. She's the Skytracker that gains gains 100 attack for every spell card in the graveyard. That's right, even the Skytracker spells. When she is special summoned, you can target one Skytracker spell in your graveyard and add that card to your hand. So you can get multiple uses out of your mobilizing gauge, because that was one of the big targets that she got. Now, the only downside to this is one of the Achilles heels to the extra deck monsters for Striker was that you were not able to special summon more than one of that monster per turn. And also, if you did special summon any of those monsters, you cannot special summon, you have to use a particular a monster that was not of the same attribute. So because thankfully Ray is dark, you can special Kagari because she needs a non-fire Spellcaster type, Skytracker type monster. Next to her is Shizuku, who her ability is to, at the end of the turn, search your deck for a Skytracker card, that is not in your graveyard. Does not share the same name as the ones in your graveyard. So this is where you get like all your other utility cards. And then her other ability is that for every spell in your graveyard, your opponent's monsters on the field lose 100 attack and or defense. Oh, in defense. I'm sorry, not in or. No, they lost 100 attack in defense for each spell card in your graveyard. So the more spells you stack on in your graveyard, the less power your opponent's monsters have. This is a bit of a big utility there, because then you can just easily knock into your opponent's monsters for damage. I don't think Skytrackers had any cards that did piercing damage, so let's be lucky that they didn't. And then benefit off of that, but I believe they might have had a spell or two to help out with that. Anyway, we have Hayate who comes in next, and she was another 3-of as well. In which Hayate's ability was that she can attack your opponent directly, And then on top of that, after the damage calculation, she was able to send a Star Striker spell, a Star Striker card from your deck to your graveyard. So she was their Foolish Burial in that sense. And then you would send her out, go get Kagari. Kagari would go get whatever spell was in the grave, because by the time you're going to send the spell, and then Shizuku at the end phase is going to search for whatever spell's not in the graveyard and add that card to the hand. And this is how they rouletted a lot of things for the Sky Striker archetype. And then of course Kina, Zeki, and all of the other support came after that. Now, for generic cards, you can fluctuate any amount of extra deck monsters that you want to for links if you want to. The only one that I do not have currently, because it is still butt fucking expensive, is Access Code Talker, which we all know how powerful Access Code Talker is. So what I did was I at least utilized the link line for a lot of the other things that I can do. Cerberus for monster removal, Phoenix for spell and trap removal, Unicorn for the bounce. Because I'm running a spellcaster, I had access to Selene, the Queen of Master Magicians. I think at the time, if we're going to go that far into either end of 2018 or early 2019, you can swap out Selene for Summon Sorceress and play around with Turbo Synchron if you want to, or Jet Synchron I think his name is, and play around with that. But if not, Selene was your next best option. Tapologic Bomber Dragon and Barrel Load Savage Dragon, because the link climb. And at most points, this Barrel Load would most likely have been Scoot the Silver. Most likely would have been our boy, Access Code Talker, who was basically the game finisher for that at that point. So yeah, this is pretty much it for my Star Striker deck profile. Well, retro deck profile. And I know it's crazy to say Star Striker being retro, but it was one of those things I wanted to go back to and definitely take advantage of for the retro deck profiles. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a very long one, but of course, there was so much to add to it. And I appreciate you guys for sticking around this long. If you have any questions or stuff, you can leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, as it helps me out tremendously. You guys can hit me up on social media, and my social media links are in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for sticking around, and thank you guys so much for watching. HVJ, signing out. Take care.